Dear colleague, my name is Michael Pulin. I would like to introduce you my new book, Architects Know What Managers Don't. This book is about business architecture, and the defined model of business architecture is the most efficient for highly dynamic business environment, though it works well in regular cases. When I presented this book in a couple of forums, people asked me pretty much the same questions. So I've decided to publish this presentation for everyone interested. The book exists in two formats. The e-book is available from Amazon and Apple. The paper version is available for ordering from my website, and you can see this link on the screen. The book is available for dispatching in 48 hours locally or internationally, and now it is dispatched to 12 countries already. This presentation will show different illustrations from the book in no particular order. So, why this book has been written? For the last few years, middle-sized and global corporations reached a level of maturity where the top corporate management needs a dedicated unit for observing and keeping intact the variety of business activities across the company. At the same time, intensive debates in the industry about the position of enterprise architecture stimulated many researches and constructive thinking in this area. Finally, an elevation of outsourcing of entire business functions and externalization of IT into cloud raised the question about an architecture of business as a self-contained independent discipline. Unfortunately, mentioned debates usually circle around what business architects should do. But nobody can define a subject via what different people do with it. That is, what via how. Without the definition of the subject, it's hardly possible to justify whether business architects do what they are supposed to be doing. We will not be able to define a discipline of business architecture without understanding and agreeing on the subject. In my opinion, the subject of business architecture demarcates and determines its discipline, and together they identify the conceptual mechanism for the corporate business. In the book, I define the subject, the discipline, and that conceptual mechanism based on unified principles of orientation on service. People ask if I belong to any of the professional groups that currently work on the concept of business architecture. Well, not really. I belong to the team that creates standards in the area of service orientation. However, I am familiar with the work of those groups and know some of the contributors personally. I think that we all recognize the same problem in the corporate business, but my practical experience and research have led me to a different conclusion and concept that is not presented in the work of those groups. One can ask, what was the major driver for writing this book? And here it is. In short, there were two drivers. First, it was and is a rethinking of the role of process-centric approach to the corporate organization. The second, it was a conflict of interest between an evanescent and sustainable management. Recent crisis has proven that process-centric enterprises are incapable of changing quickly enough to be in sync with the market demand. Business process by nature deals with changes like a square peg with a round hole. So I wanted to find a mechanism that would stimulate adoption of business changes regardless of the size or type of an enterprise. Such mechanism has to be business-friendly and very flexible. Out of the conflict of interest, no architecture can resolve it. However, the book clearly states that if a company explicitly uses business architecture, this indicates a sustainable management style. What is the fundamental difference and the value of the proposed business architecture? I have defined a business architecture whose subject and discipline capitalize on the most natural for human and businesses concept. That's the concept of the orientation of service. The essence of any business in any company is not its capabilities, but its service orientation. Many know this, but very few say this aloud. Service orientation is the only understood and accepted behavioral model in all businesses. No business can exist that does not serve its consumers. Therefore, this concept is the foundation of the architecture of business. Since business architecture focuses on services, that means business services, it requires appropriate organization of business. That is, particularly, appropriate organizational and operational models and the corporate culture. I am introducing solutions for all of these enterprise elements in the book, including a few licensed methods for constructing architectural artifacts in line with this natural business architecture. In the forums, many ask for more details of such an approach and its consequences. Well, everything I said is discussed in the book that has about 150 literature references for comparing of different opinions of different experts. From the practical perspective, business services not only form a business architecture, but also determine what business architecture should and what they may do. This includes rationalness of developing particular blueprints and not something else. It puts maps of business capabilities on the ground of actual implementation resources. And finally, it demands that a flat service and contract-based organization of business to be in place. An enterprise that is really oriented on service and consumer satisfaction treats its internal functions as services as well as external functions. In essence, there is no difference between internal and external consumers and services, and outsourcing of the entire business functions has clearly demonstrated this fact. When a company is constructed and operates as a command and control hierarchy, where each manager focuses on keeping or raising the occupied position, the CEO's words about client centricity or focusing on the client needs have only a value of politically correct declarations. Administrative hierarchies cannot coexist with service orientation. The latter becomes a part of the corporate culture, and this is another differentiator of my definition of business architecture. A real service-oriented corporate culture includes a self-healing mechanism that eliminates work for the sake of the work, as it appears in too many process-centric businesses. Overall, the book certainly recognizes business processes and business cases, but in a form of realization of business services, not as a constructive means. It is because every business process is a business service to its consumers and nothing more. People ask, what may be done in the first step on the way to the service-oriented business architecture? Here it's what I have done. First, I distinguish between the subject and the discipline of business architecture, because not everything what business architects do in the enterprise automatically belongs to the business architecture, in my opinion. For example, if a business architect recommends to split or to merge certain business units based on the business functions they provide, it is the management who owns the actual change in the organizational chart. That is, this is not a part of business architecture. I also recognize a difference between an architecture itself and its arbitrary implementations. An implementation usually includes business capabilities, business processes, organizational and operational structures, and some others. But due to this separation between architecture and its implementation, an enterprise has a freedom and flexibility to purify and improve its structure and its capability roadmap, going step by step under the same business architecture until it transforms to the next or final strategic state. The better management implements decisions and directions of business architecture, the more chances for the company to gain a competitive advantage in the market. But this is duty of the management. Finally, the materials in the book focus on two aspects: what a business architecture is and what we can or should do with such an architecture. Business architecture discipline is a work in progress. The book offers a matrix of the discipline and duties of business architects, but puts a lot of attention on how regular things appear differently if people think in services. When service-oriented mentality in business prevails, particular elements of business architecture discipline may be adjusted and refined as needed. How quickly a reader can find answers to a specific question in a book? Well, the book is about 400 pages and comprises 4 parts and 15 chapters. Each chapter starts with a couple of page summary of what is described in it and discussed in it. A reader can review the summary and decide if particular chapter is of interest and read it or not. It's up to the reader. Parts 1 and 2 of the book describe the notions of business process and business service respectively. If a reader believes she or he knows the stuff, it is possible to start reading from the definition and application of business architecture described in the parts 3 and 4. However, it is recommended to look through parts 1 and 2 because you might find some non-traditional views in this material, actually taken from the point of service orientation. Part 4 contains many real-world examples and original architectural methods set in line with business services. Additionally, the book introduction contains a glossary of terms for those who are looking up for what is what. This glossary may be used as a quick reference to the core terms in the field of business architecture, and in any case, this is the terminology used in the book, and I hope the reader would understand the meaning of the terms I used in the book before starting to read it. The book cover says that it has support from my website. Yes, I have a 3-day training course that is offered to the groups and a few short and affordable e-presentations for individuals. The course covering end-to-end subject of business architecture from the purpose and principle concepts, elements of architecture, and their realization through different enterprise elements and means, and ending with some best practices and recommendations. Also, there is a catalog of my paper published with regard to some aspects of business architecture, in addition to the book. I hope, dear colleague, you will enjoy the book. I would be delighted to hear your opinion. The feedback from a few industry leaders who already read this book is and will be published on Amazon. Thank you and good luck.